Hello, my name is Sandra Longweaver. Welcome to Take 10 on Tuesdays with the Tennessee Tribune. Today, our guest is the Reverend Dr. Judy Cummings, who is the senior pastor at New Covenant Christian Church. And she has just finished her year as the first woman elected to chair the Interdenominational Ministers Fellowship. Hello and welcome.
Hello, Sandra. How are you?
I am good.
Good.
We wanted to spend today talking a little bit about the Interdenominational Ministers Fellowship, and tell us, what is that and how old is that organization and what do they do here in Nashville?
The Interdenominational Ministers Fellowship, better known as IMF, across the city, because Interdenominational Ministers Fellowship is a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
But better known as IMF, began in 1954 during the height of the civil rights struggle. And it was started by Andrew White and Kelly Miller Smith Sr. A couple of others were on board at that time. It was primarily started as a place where pastors could come together for fellowship. Therein lies the name IMF Fellowship.
I see.
And then it quickly became a place for conversation as it related to the struggle, and then also a place where people would meet to talk about strategies.
Strategies in terms of protesting or whatever
the civil rights, and a place where information could be disseminated out to the community.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's how it got started.
Mm-hmm.
So now, what led to your involvement in the organization?
Well, I'm a retired registered nurse.
Ah.
I worked for St. Thomas Hospital for 25 years as a founding member of Temple Baptist Church with Michael Lee Graves.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know anything about Dr. Graves, you know that he was, actually he was one of the past presidents of IMF. So he's very justice minded and always preached a message of social justice.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, I was wrestling with a call to the ministry, subsequently did answer my call to the ministry. And when I did, he suggested that I start attending the meetings.
Oh, really?
So I started attending the meetings in 1993, 94, as I was beginning my seminary education.
I see.
And so I found it to be a place, to be able to meet colleagues across the city who were doing ministry, and primarily doing the kind of ministry that I was really feeling called to do.
Mm-hmm. Which is? Tell us.
A ministry of that's in the community, a ministry of advocacy,
Mm-hmm.
a ministry of speaking for the marginalized, advocating for the poor, and speaking out against issues of injustice.
Okay. And so, under your reign, under the year that you spent in the leadership role of this organization, what did you focus on?
So I am the first woman to be voted in as the president of the Interdenominational Ministers Fellowship, which in itself is historical.
Okay.
Prior to that, however, over the years, I've served as secretary, vice president, and then several years ago, they put a position in place, president-elect.
Oh, I see.
So I served as president-elect for 2 years before becoming the president.
Right. Okay.
I served with Reverend Sonny Dixon. He was the president, and I was president-elect.
Okay.
And so in my year, from the legacy that was handed down to me, the president of IMF basically sets the tone for IMF and the work that IMF will do over those 2 years. Because of my background in medicine, everything I do is all about teamwork.
I see. Okay.
And so I put a team in place that I call watchdogs, who would watch over the various issues that we were facing in this city, that IMF, as the leading justice organization in the city, would need to speak.
Okay.
Either speak against or speak for. And so I had a watchdog team that looked at the issue of the death penalty. And that was led by Reverend Stacy Rector and Joe Engel, who's both of them, their lifetime work has been to advocate against the death penalty. So during my tenure as president, I wrote, I think, 3 long editorials regarding the death penalty and the theological implications of the death penalty.
I see.
I also had a watchdog team that looked out for issues as it related to criminal justice. And that was led by Reverend Thomas Hunter, who works for the Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
And so we were able to stay on top of any issues that were coming through. So during my tenure, that very first year, the issue under the criminal justice issues that we were able to advocate against was that was right when the study came out about the disproportionate number of African American students and students of color who were being either suspended or expelled from metropolitan schools.
I see. Okay.
And so we started an ad hoc committee, the board listening with one voice, and we were able to, during that time, address those issues. Those issues are continued to be addressed even now, as you're well aware.
Yes.
But that was the genesis of
the very beginning
of community stakeholders talking about that issue and how it was negatively impacting children of color.
And have you seen any changes during that, or at least some progress toward?
Right. So you may be aware that one of the things that metropolitan schools are doing now is a practice called restorative justice. And IMF now is also a member of NOAA.
Yes.
NOAA is a community organization. And so one of the issues that NOAA is addressing is this issue of the disproportionate number of students who are expelled and suspended. And so there's a push right now, and IMF has representatives that sit on the NOAA board. As a matter of fact, the chair of NOAA is Ed Thompson, who is a past president of IMF.
Yes.
So we all do that work together. And so right now, Metro Schools is in that forming stage, but the statistics are there.
Right.
The information is there. Now it's just going to take another push to make them make it concretized, and in some kind of a way that changes behaviors and practices.
Okay.
So I see it coming.
Yeah.
It's a work that is in progress. I see it coming. There's going to be a public meeting about that soon, and so the public will need to keep an ear out for that meeting that's up and coming.
Sponsored by IMF?
Sponsored by NOAA.
Sponsored by NOAA.
And the chair of IMF,
Okay.
of NOAA. So those works are in progress. Also, I put into place a watchdog for education in general. And Reverend Sonny Dixon was our point person for that. And then IMF Executive Board met monthly with Dr. Register. So education continues to be, and if you looked at the original mission of IMF when it was originally formed, you will see that education was one of those tenets that the organization wanted to make sure that we had voice in. And so we continue to advocate for our students, and the parents of the students, and for the educational system that is equitable.
Okay. So now, education, working on
the death penalty, criminal justice. Also,
what about youth violence? I'm sorry, you were about
I was going to say also during my tenure was when the Affordable Care Act was passed.
Yes.
And so we had a watchdog team who took those issues up. And what we were able to do was to help get the information out about the Affordable Care Act, get people to the meetings, and get them signed up. So I thought that was really important.
Yes.
And then another legacy of my tenure is, and it was really handed to me, but State Representative Harold Love,
yes,
who served as my president-elect, who is now the president of IMF, would give us legislative updates on a quarterly basis. So we were always kept abreast and apprised of legislation that was in the pipe, legislation that was being dealt with, so that we had the opportunity to pull together people to advocate against it if it was something that we needed to advocate against,
Mm-hmm.
or to go down there to support if we needed to support our legislators.
Oh, great.
And then Kathy Buggs, who works for Congressman Jim Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
she was our Capitol Hill, D.C. Connection, and kept us apprised of legislation that was coming down from Capitol Hill and from the President Barack Obama's office.
Okay.
And we also, under my legacy, launched the IMF Community Fund.
Mm-hmm.
It had originally been a Pinuel Initiative, and the Pinuel Initiative was all about education, and so that was under Reverend Sonny Dixon's tenure. And what we did, we got churches together who would open their doors to do tutoring, adopt schools, to do we called them Patricia Stokes, who is now moved to Chicago. We did dinners. We partnered with the Urban League to do these dinners where families could come around a dinner table to teach them how to have conversation with their children when they come home from school, and those kinds of things. Well, so that Pinuel initiative went away, and we now have the IMF Community Fund,
Mm-hmm.
which supports community events that are doing these kinds of things that are in line with the vision of IMF.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite a bit of work went on under
It was.
And you will still serve on the board.
I will continue to serve on the executive board for 2 years as the immediate past president.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, Harold Love is now the president, and I guess we were supposed to really be installing him on tomorrow, but with all the snow that came, we're going to have to reschedule all of that. So so really excited about his presidency, and standing on tiptoes to see what he's going to be able to bring about in our community.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what about the average person who may attend church but who wants to do something else? Is there some way they can get involved with IMF?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So IMF is not just for pastors and ministers,
Okay.
but it's also for the community. So we have several community members,
Mm-hmm.
folk who are members of IMF. They come to IMF. We've been meeting on Wednesdays at 12 noon for years.
Oh,
and
okay.
it's just always been a really good place to come to stay abreast about what's happening in the community.
And where is the meeting?
The meeting now is held at Pleasant Green, right here on Jefferson Street, where Dr. Chris Jackson is the pastor.
Yes.
And so, but it's every Wednesday at 12 noon. The first Wednesday of IMF is always Preaching Wednesday.
Oh.
And we have some powerful preachers who come, so you should come on the first Wednesdays to get that noonday snack.
Okay.
Get that word. And then the third Wednesdays are set aside for continuing education for our pastors. And I put Dr. Jackson under my tenure was our community, our continuing education point person, and he did a fabulous job these past 2 years. And then the other Wednesdays are designated for our community partners to come in to do presentations, to talk about, what is happening. And I know that up and coming, for instance, the DA's office will be coming to do a presentation about the overpopulation of the jails, and also about the release of inmates and what we need to do to prepare for them and to help them get jobs and to do those kinds of things. So we have some interesting conversations at 12 noon on Wednesdays.
Yes, you do. And we'd like to get the word out about that.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Cummings, for joining us today. We've learned a lot about IMF and your role. Congratulations on a successful 2 years.
It's 2 years. It was 2 years, yeah. And
All
I'm so thankful and grateful to my church, New Covenant Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, at 22010 Osage Street. Come at 10 o'clock any Sunday morning,
Yes.
or listen to us on the radio. But I'm eternally grateful to them for releasing me and giving me the time to be able to not only pastor the church, but also to pastor the community. And it was at a great sacrifice for them, but they're a great congregation.
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. Stay tuned to Take 10 on Tuesdays with the Tennessee Tribune. Thank you.